Hello, welcome back to Heaven's Kitchen. We are your glass masked Dominican chefs, and we are here with our next episode, Hot Cross Buns. I'm Kathleen Folan, Director of Family and Youth Ministries.
And I'm Brother Michael James, Director of Community Outreach at our Lima Center. Let's get started. So this recipe is actually very similar to pretzels, which we did a few weeks ago, but there's a few more ingredients. It's a little sweeter with a little bit of spice. So we'll show you as we go. So we start with 1.5 cups of warm milk.
Warm. We heated it up ahead of time.
So heat it up just a little bit. You don't want it boiling, but you want it warm enough so that it helps activate the yeast. 1/2 cup of sugar. Okay. And then 2 teaspoons of instant yeast or 2 1/4 teaspoons of active yeast, whichever one you have on hand. Just make sure you're using the right amounts. All right, and we're going to mix that up a little bit, and then you're going to give it about 5 minutes to activate, and the yeast will start to foam and bubble up, and that's how you know it's working.
Just like our pretzels,
Just
right?
like the pretzels, exactly. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to have you prep our dry ingredients.
Sure.
So you have 4 1/4 cups of bread flour, and I like to use bread flour because it means the buns aren't so dense. You can use all-purpose flour, but they get a little denser. So bread flour if you have it, or all-purpose if you don't. And then to this you're going to add your spices and salt. So there's 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1.5 teaspoons of nutmeg, and then 1 teaspoon of ground cloves. So go ahead and incorporate that.
Smells good already.
Yeah, it does. It smells great. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes, and our yeast is activated. I'm going to try to tip it towards the camera so you can see. It's gotten a little foamy there. So to this, we're going to add 1/4 cup of unsalted butter, melted. Remember, we already put salt in with the spices, so we want to make sure that your butter is unsalted. Add that in. I'm going to add in 1 egg, and you'll need another egg for later to brush on the top, so don't worry about that one quite yet. We're going to put in our fruit, and so I'm using a combination of 1/2 cup of cranberries and 1/2 cup of golden raisins, but you can use other fruits. You can use candied fruits like candied pineapple or things like that. Just make sure that whatever fruit you use isn't dried. So you can't use like dried bananas or dried mangoes because it won't have any moisture to it. The great thing about dried cranberries and raisins, whether they're golden raisins or regular raisins, is they still have a little bit of plumpness and juice to them. So we're going to put those in. And then if you want to stir that up a little bit, Kathy, everything gets incorporated. And then we're going to add our 4 1/4 cups of bread flour with our spices and salt, which you've already incorporated.
Into here?
That's right. And then we'll take it over to the stand mixer using our hook attachment to do all the kneading for us, although you'll still have to do a little bit at the end, but for the most part it will do a lot of that work.
There you go.
Perfect. Now we're going to put it on slow with the hook attachment again so the flour doesn't fly all over the place, and then we'll see you in a couple minutes once it's all been incorporated. Okay, so our dough was kneading in the stand mixer for 5 or 6 minutes with the hook attachment, which will take off here, and you'll see the dough, it pulls away from the sides. Most of the flour is incorporated. It should be a little damp with all those wet ingredients. Perfect. We're going to knead it just a little bit more to make sure that there's no pockets of flour on the inside and that everything has come together. Ooh, that's sticky. That's good.
Okay, while you're kneading, can I just sing a song that's been in my head?
Oh, sure.
Hot cross buns, hot cross buns, 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns. Have you ever heard that song?
I've heard it before.
So it was a salesman's cry for street markets in England a long time ago, when they were selling them for Good Friday, which we'll talk about a little later.
Right.
And then it became a nursery rhyme, popular in England, which also came to America because I grew up singing that song.
Yeah. I think that's probably where I heard it, as the nursery rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it was actually for selling hot cross buns, so that's really interesting.
Well, most of our nursery rhymes come from somewhere. Sometimes they're political slogans, like the 1600s or something.
All right, so I think our dough looks good. So everything's incorporated. We used this nice silicone mat so it doesn't stick, but you can also use parchment paper with a little bit of oil on it to keep it from sticking there. And we're going to put this into a bowl that's been pre-greased with a little bit of vegetable oil. And then Kathy's going to cover that with some saran wrap. And we're going to leave that to rise for an hour. So most of the recipes I make take a lot of time, but you'll enjoy it in the end. Okay, so it's been about an hour, and as you can see, our dough has risen and doubled in size a little bit. So we're going to take it out. Hopefully it doesn't stick if you used enough flour in the pan, or in the bowl. Yeah, that's good. Okay. And we have our silicone mats here. So you're going to divide it into 12, just like we did with the pretzels. So, and I think 12 is the easy number. Think of the apostles, right? So you already know how many to do. So
this is truly Easter bread.
Easter bread. And then while we're rolling these out, just want to talk a little bit about the symbols of the dough of hot cross buns. So, okay. All right, there's our 12. And they don't have to be perfect, right? So you're just going to shape it into a ball. Try to keep your fruit on the inside if you can. All right, so the symbols, and this is great as I was doing more research on hot cross buns. Obviously, each one has a cross on the top, symbolic of the cross on which Jesus was crucified and which we venerate on Good Friday. So hot cross buns are typically eaten on Good Friday or Holy Saturday or Easter Sunday. And that's because everything in them has a different symbol connected to the story. So the spices of cinnamon and cloves and nutmeg are symbolic of the spices that the women brought to anoint the body of Jesus after his death.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mary Magdalene
yes,
and the Holy Women.
Right, so we think about those as we put in the spices. With the spices, we also put in a little bit of salt. So the salt, obviously we've talked about that symbolism before. In this case, representing the bitterness, the sadness, the tears that the disciples and Mary cried as Jesus was crucified. Yeah. And then we have the fruit. And so earliest recipes that we have didn't really have fruit in them. It was a very simple recipe. But as time went on, the fruit was incorporated in, and the fruit represents the fruit of good works of charity. So we think of Joseph of Arimathea asking Pontius Pilate for Jesus' body, and then burying it in his own tomb. So that great work, corporal work of mercy of burying the dead. So all of these things have those different meanings, the different symbols that we can think about as you're making these and telling these stories about our faith, which is the greatest story of all, the story of our Lord's passion and resurrection.
That's beautiful. I just thought these were yummy, but now I know all the symbolism behind them.
Okay, and as we finish, we're going to put saran wrap over these again, because they're going to raise for about another 45 minutes to an hour. And again, that's why we spread them out a little bit so that they're not right next to each other, because otherwise they would run into each other as they grew in size. Okay, so our buns have been rising for about 45 minutes now, and you can see they've poofed up just a little bit. So you can tell, and you'll notice a little bit of steam under the plastic, so that's a good sign. So go ahead and take the plastic off. Okay, now comes the cross part of a hot cross bun. So you're just going to cut a simple cross, just the same way that we did last week with the Irish soda bread, right? So you're going to cut that cross in the top.
But not all the way through.
Not all the way through. Just enough to give yourself that long.
Hot cross buns, hot cross buns. 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns. I can't stop singing that song.
Okay, so we have our crosses, and then we're just going to put a little bit of egg wash, so that other egg in the recipe with a little bit of water. Perfect. And you get your little brush, either a silicone brush or what you have in the house, and just brush it on top of your buns.
Oh, just like the pretzels.
Just like the pretzels. Yep. So it's going to help get that nice golden brown color, which is what we want. And believe me, it'll be delicious.
I can't wait. Okay.
Okay, so let's get the oven mitts. We don't want to burn ourselves sticking them into the oven.
Good thinking.
Okay. Open the other door.
And the other. And how long do we bake these for?
So we bake these for 20 minutes at 350 degrees. So we'll see you when that's done.
Okay.
Okay, so it's been 20 minutes, which means it's time to take our hot cross buns out of the oven. So
And it
Kathy's going to
smells
go ahead and
so
get those. Make
good.
sure you've got your oven mitts on because you don't want to burn yourself. Ooh, look at how great those look.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
Oh my goodness, Brother Michael James, you know what they smell like. Evan's Kitchen.
Evan's Kitchen, that's right. So, as you can see, you have a little cross mark on the top. Actually, do you want to hold that up a little bit?
Yeah.
With the, just so our watchers can see, our viewers can see. Great. So, what you can do at this point is you can enjoy them as they are, let them cool for about 5 or 6 minutes, obviously, before you take a bite. If you want to get fancy, you can put a little gloss of apricot jam and just brush it on the same way we did with the egg. You can also put a more distinct cross on the top. You can use a little powdered sugar and milk or a simple pastry cream, which is what I like to do. So, but they're also delicious just as they are. So thanks for joining us today on Heaven's Kitchen to make hot cross buns. Hopefully you make them with your family and get to enjoy them on Good Friday and Holy Saturday.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.